There's something quiet in this energy right now. Almost like the moment after a storm passes and everything goes still, that kind of heavy, uncertain stillness where you're not sure if it's peace or just a pause. If you've been sitting with something lately, something that feels unresolved, something you keep returning to in your mind even when you try to move on from it, this reading found you for a reason. I want you to just settle in with me for a moment, because what's coming through here is layered. It's personal. And for some of you, it's going to feel like someone has been reading the pages of your life that you thought no one else could see. The first thing I'm feeling in this energy, even before I begin to really move through it, is this sense of two people who are not in the same space, literally or emotionally, but who are more energetically connected than either of them is fully letting themselves acknowledge. That's where we're starting. Not with what's been said, but with what hasn't been. Not with what happened, but with what's been quietly building underneath the surface since then. Let's talk about your person for a moment, because their energy is very present here and it's coming in a very specific way. There's a heaviness around them. Not a coldness, it's not that. It's more like someone who has been carrying something and is finally, slowly beginning to set it down. Some of you, when you think about this person, maybe you've felt confused. Maybe you've oscillated between wondering if they even think about you at all, and then having moments, quiet moments, usually late at night, where something in you just knows the connection hasn't dissolved. You're not imagining that. What I'm seeing here suggests that on their end, there has been an internal reckoning happening. Something has been shifting. Quietly, privately, in the way that real change usually does, not loudly, not dramatically, just gradually, like something thawing. Your person pushed you away. And I want to be careful here, because I want to say this in a way that honors your experience, because however it happened, whether it was through emotional withdrawal, inconsistent behavior, sharp words, shutting down, creating distance, however they did it, it hurt. The energy around this situation speaks to someone who gave more than they received for a period of time. Someone who extended grace and patience and possibly gave the benefit of the doubt more times than they probably should have. And then eventually, something happened, either you stepped back yourself, or the situation created a natural distance, and now there's this space between you. And in that space, a lot has been processed by both of you, but in very different ways. For you, I think there's been a kind of emotional excavation happening. Like you've had to sit with this and really look at it. Not just the loss of this person, but what the dynamic itself was bringing up for you. Some of you have done a lot of healing in this time apart. Some of you have had hard conversations with yourself about patterns, about what you were accepting, about what you actually want versus what you were settling for. And that growth, even if it came through pain, that growth is real and it's yours. No one can take that from you. But here's what I find deeply interesting as I sit with this energy. Your person has been going through their own version of that. Their version just looks different. Where you have perhaps been more open to processing, more willing to feel the discomfort and move through it, your person has been more resistant. More defended. And here's what I want you to understand about that, not to excuse anything they did, but because it genuinely matters for what's coming. Defended people don't become defensive about things that don't matter to them. The walls people build are built specifically around what they're most afraid of losing. And the level of resistance your person showed, the way they acted out, the way they pulled back, the way their behavior created this rupture, that level of chaos doesn't come from indifference. It comes from someone who is deeply, almost terrifyingly, unsure of how to handle what they feel. I'm getting this image of someone sitting with themselves, maybe recently, and having one of those moments of real honesty. Not the polished kind of honesty, not the kind where you look good, but the kind that's uncomfortable. The kind that makes you look at your own reflection and think, I did that. I caused that. I pushed that person away and I knew I was doing it and I let it happen anyway. That kind of clarity. That kind of reckoning. Does this feel like someone you know? Because the energy is very specific here. This is not someone who is still convinced they were right. Something has cracked open in their perspective. There's almost a sense of pride softening around this person's energy. And I say that carefully, because pride is complicated. Pride can be a shield. Pride can be the thing that stops someone from reaching out even when every part of them wants to. Pride is what makes someone go silent for weeks when what they actually needed was 5 minutes of vulnerability. And your person has been wrestling with this. The pride that kept them silent, the pride that convinced them to act unbothered, to move like what happened didn't affect them, that pride is losing its grip. I almost want to say it feels like someone who has been trying to hold a door shut and is just now loosening their grip on the handle. There's something developing behind the scenes here. Something being planned, or at least considered. I'm not seeing recklessness. This isn't someone who is going to act impulsively. If anything, they've been overthinking this. They've probably rehearsed things in their mind more than once. They've picked up the phone and put it back down. They've started a message and deleted it. Some of you might have even felt this energetically, those moments where you almost expected to hear from them and then didn't. That anticipation you felt wasn't unfounded. There were moments they were right on the edge of reaching out and then retreated again. But what I'm seeing now feels different. There's a more settled quality to their energy now, like they've made a decision internally, even if they haven't acted on it outwardly just yet. Now I want to talk about the energy of walking away, because it's very present in this reading and I think it's important to understand what role it's playing here. For some of you, there has been, or there is currently, a moment of genuine stepping back. And I want to be honest with you about this, that walking away, whether you did it consciously or whether it happened as a natural consequence of the situation, has been meaningful. It's created something. It's created space for your person to feel the reality of your absence in a way they couldn't feel it when you were always present. Some people don't understand what something means to them until it's not there. Your person is in that realization right now. They are in the experience of understanding what your presence meant because they are sitting with what your absence feels like. And that is not a small thing. Some of you may have felt guilty about pulling back. Some of you may have wondered if stepping away was the wrong move, if maybe you should have stayed in the conversation, stayed in the orbit, kept the door more obviously open. I want you to release that guilt. The distance wasn't abandonment, it was self-preservation. And more than that, it was actually one of the most honest things you could have done in the situation. You stopped performing something that wasn't working. There's real integrity in that. Here's what I want to come back to though, because this is where the energy starts to shift in this reading and I want you to feel that shift. There's something new trying to emerge here. Something that feels like a genuine beginning, not a reunion in the sense of going back to what was, but something different. Something that could only exist on the other side of everything that's happened. Both of you have been changed by this experience. The dynamic that existed before is not the dynamic that would exist if the two of you came back together now. And I think on some level, your person senses this. I think part of what they've been processing is that they can't approach this the same way they approached things before. That the old patterns, the defenses, the walls, those things would not be welcome now. And that's actually what has slowed them down more than anything else. Not a lack of feeling, but the weight of knowing that to do this right, they have to show up differently. I'm hearing something like, it almost feels like there's an acknowledgement trying to find its way to you. Not just, I miss you, though that's there. But something more specific. Something that sounds like, I know I did this. I know my behavior was part of what created this distance. And I'm not asking you to forget that, I'm asking you for the chance to be better than that. That energy is real. Whether or not it manifests in exactly those words, that's the emotional undertone. The accountability is there. And for many of you, that's actually what you've needed more than anything else, not just the return of this person, but the acknowledgement that what happened, happened. That you didn't imagine it. That you didn't overreact. That it was real, and it was painful, and they know that. There's also this theme of something that was withheld beginning to open up. I want to linger here because it's coming through strongly. There's been a withholding energy around your person for a long time, and this isn't just about this situation, this might actually be a pattern for them. The tendency to close off emotionally, to hold things in, to not communicate what's actually happening on the inside. Whether that comes from fear of vulnerability, fear of judgment, past experiences that taught them that openness was unsafe, something has kept them from being fully transparent with you. And what I'm seeing now is that this is beginning to shift. It's like a door that has been locked is slowly, finally, being unlocked. Not thrown wide open, let's be realistic about the pace of this, but the decision to unlock it has been made. There's a difference between someone who hasn't communicated and is not going to, and someone who hasn't communicated but is preparing to. The energy around your person right now feels like the latter. There's something they have been keeping inside that they are getting ready to express. And it's not casual. It's not small talk. It's not a surface level, "Hey, how are you?" What they want to say to you, what they've been building up to, is something more real than that. Have you noticed lately that you've had a kind of quiet knowing? Like something in you has shifted from the desperate, anxious energy of early in this situation to something calmer? Something more grounded? I want you to pay attention to that. Because when we stop chasing, when we return to ourselves, when we refocus our energy back inward, something often shifts in the external situation too. That's not coincidence. That's energy. Your person is not responding to a version of you that is waiting for them. They are being drawn toward a version of you that is living their life. And I want to say something about that, because it matters. You have been growing through this. Even if the process has been painful, even if there have been nights that felt too heavy, even if the confusion sometimes felt like it would swallow you whole, you have been becoming something through this experience. There is something clearer in your energy now than there was when this all began. Something more defined. You know yourself better. You know what you want better. You know what you're worth better. And all of that is something no one, not even this person, can take away from you regardless of how any of this unfolds. But about how this unfolds, let me come back to that. Because the energy here isn't pointing towards something that disappears without resolution. There's something promising in this field. Not a guarantee, I always want to be honest about that, and I'll say as I sense it, this reading is for a collective, so some of what I'm sharing will land more directly for some of you than others. Take what feels true in your bones and leave the rest. But for those of you for whom this is landing, for those of you feeling that recognition in your chest right now, the energy of what's coming feels like something more substantial than a passing moment. I keep coming back to this sense of a real beginning. Not a patched-up version of what was. Something new. Something built with more awareness on both sides, more honesty, more space for the real versions of two people to actually meet each other rather than the defended, guarded, performance versions. There's a feeling of two people who have been circling around the most honest version of this connection and are now finally ready to stop circling and actually step into it. There's also, and this is interesting, a sense of a promise in the energy. Not in a grand, dramatic sense. More like a personal commitment. Your person making a commitment to themselves about how they want to show up. A kind of internal vow. You know how sometimes people have to reach a place internally before they can act differently externally? That's what I'm sensing here. This person has arrived at something. A line in themselves that says, I can't keep doing things the way I've been doing them. Not with this person. This matters too much. There's also something, I want to be careful with how I say this, there's something that feels like a kind of love here that the person doesn't quite know what to do with. Not the kind of love that's easy and light. The kind that's complicated because it's deep. The kind that unsettles someone who isn't used to feeling things that strongly. And I think part of the chaos you experienced from this person, part of the hot and cold, the push and pull, the self-sabotaging behavior, part of all of that was someone who was, in the most frustratingly human way, acting out because they didn't know how to contain what they felt. That doesn't make it okay. But it does make it understandable. And for some of you, understanding that might actually bring some peace. The energy around timing here feels like something that is close but not quite instantaneous. Don't look for this at a specific moment, don't try to calculate it. The energy doesn't work that way. But close is what I keep sensing. Like something that has been delayed longer than it needed to be, but is now finally finding its momentum. There's a feeling of something that has been held back starting to move forward. For those of you who are wondering what your role in this is, I want to speak to that briefly. You don't have to do anything dramatic. You don't have to reach out first, you don't have to create the opportunity, you don't have to manage this process. What the energy seems to be saying is that your work right now is actually to continue doing exactly what you've been doing. To continue with your life. To continue your healing. To continue being present in your own world. The outreach that's coming, the connection that's trying to form, it doesn't require you to engineer it. It requires you to be available to it when it arrives. That's a different thing entirely. And when it does come, whether it's a message, a call, an unexpected encounter, however it manifests for your specific situation, I want you to approach it from this place of groundedness you've been building. Not with walls. Not with coldness. But not with the same openness you had before the hurt either. This is about responding from your most grounded, most self-aware self. The version of you that knows your worth. The version of you that can hear someone out without losing yourself in the process. There's more to this story than has been written yet. I feel that clearly. The chapter that's closing, the one filled with the silence, the confusion, the painful in-between, that chapter is ending. Something new is beginning. Tentatively, carefully, but genuinely. And the energy of this new chapter doesn't feel like a repeat. It feels like an evolution. I want to leave you with something, not as a conclusion but more as a reminder. You have navigated something difficult with more grace than you probably give yourself credit for. The staying present with yourself, the continuing to move even when the uncertainty was heavy, the refusing to completely close your heart even though part of you wanted to, all of that required a kind of strength that doesn't always get named. But I'm naming it now. You've been stronger than this situation deserved. Whatever comes next, whatever this connection becomes or doesn't become, you already have the most important thing. You have yourself. Clearer than before. More grounded than before. And more ready than before for something that can actually hold the real weight of who you are. Trust what you've been sensing. Trust the quietness that has slowly replaced the anxiety. Trust that if something is meant to find its way back to you, it will not require you to chase it. And trust that your peace, the peace you have been quietly building, is not a consolation prize. It is the foundation of everything good that comes next.